This would be my last post of the night, and it deals with amendments to the Constitution. And some of it may be, okay, well, what does this have to do with me? It may not have anything to do with you right now, but it's good to understand what the basic laws of your land are. Because if anything should happen, then at least you know of what's taking place or what has been put into law, instead of you depending upon someone else who may or may not care about your application of the law and have their own application, which may or may not be fair. So you want to be careful. It's a good thing to understand not only the rules of God, but the rules of this nation as well. So right now we're going to deal with the 21st Amendment. We're going to knock it all out in one session because it's a rather short amendment, but it's pretty important in terms of its application. Maybe not for you, or it shouldn't be for you as saints of God, but for others, it does have some ramifications. So this 21st Amendment, it is the repeal of prohibition. This is the first and only amendment that was presented and ratified to repeal another amendment. I want you to remember that. This is one amendment that has ended up being the only one that has repealed another amendment. And then there's another application of it that I'm going to actually show as a, we call it, as similar to another act that has recently been passed. You can see how it relates to that particular one. But let's go ahead with Section 1 of this first of the 21st Amendment. It says, the 18th article of amendment, this is Section 1, the 18th article of amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. That's all this section says. So pretty short, but also pretty blunt. But to kind of elaborate on this, the 18th Amendment was the amendment that was brought up to the people, brought up to lawmakers. And at that time, it was a very strong push to rid the country of liquor because of all the ills. We see it even now. People getting drunk, alcohol-induced rage, of course, drunk drivers killing and maiming many people, loss of productivity, and all those type of things that goes with the drinking of alcohol. I know some people drink it for pleasure, some drink it as a custom, and you have to kind of go with each country. But in this particular place, essentially, most time when people drink alcohol, it's to actually get a buzz and to forget about their problems. Doesn't always happen that way, but that's what the attempt is, or to feel social, to loosen their tongue. And sometimes their tongue shouldn't be loosened. But the idea here was that in the 18th Amendment was that alcohol should be taken off the shelves, not sold, not distributed, not made. And while the intent was good, as far as first people who are supposed to be children of God, while the intent was good, sometimes we mean good, but it ends up backfiring in our face. This was one of those things that took place. My pastor used to always say, you cannot legislate holiness. And he has proven to be so true. Now, not my current pastor, although he probably say the same thing, but my previous one. course, by the name of Bishop Howard Swansea. Some call him sin-killing Swansea. That was his thing. He always preached about sin and how we should get away from sin. And I thank God for that. And he was one that essentially, he did not agree with drinking of alcohol. He wasn't going to put in hell anyone who did drink alcohol on a, because there are certain cultures, again, that do drink alcohol. But for him, he said, I'm not going to drink it. And if it's going to cause my brother or sister to stumble, I'm not going to drink it. So he didn't drink it. And that's exactly how I feel as well. You can drink it if you want, but I'm not going to drink it. But I'm not going to tell you that you can't get anything. If your flesh says, I'm getting it, it's what you say. I'm not going to put you in jail or call the cops on you. But that was what was going on. So that was essentially very, but what happened was essentially if they feel that if, people more sober-minded to be able to add productivity to the nation and so on, but we find out that people didn't want to lose the alcohol. And they were going to get it any way that they wished, legally or illegally. Of course, during the days of Prohibition, they got it illegally. And it became cheaper and cheaper to get alcohol on the black market because so much was being used, so much was being produced because they had a huge audience to get it. And there was not that many police that could actually effectively keep things from popping up all over the place to serve alcohol. And one of the worst scourges of that was essentially the rise of the mafia. Now, the mafia had been there before the prohibition of alcohol. But when alcohol was actually prohibited, the mafia jumped in. We're going to supply it. We're going to control it. We're going to sell it. And it made them extremely powerful enough to buy law enforcement so that they would turn the other way while they plied their trade. It gave the mafia their power. Those of you that heard of Al Capone, that's how he rose up. That's how he got so powerful, because he was into the distribution of alcohol. So, in order to try to put back the genie out of the bottle, or put back the genie that was out the bottle, of course, they couldn't stop some of it, but they said, well, you know what, if we could regulate it, then let's go ahead and repeal it. And so this section 1 refers to that. It's repealed. Section number 2 is pretty interesting. This is what it says. The transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof. Now, the laws thereof of what? Couldn't be the federal government, because this is the repeal of prohibition. So it actually was in violation of the state laws or the territorial laws or those that were part of the possession of the United States who had their own laws. It could not be sold or distributed into any place where there were laws against it. So in some places, the laws it was kept that way. It was kept essentially that let's not put alcohol in our society, not in our cities, not in our towns, not in our villages. Some of you may remember where Sundays were always a very, they say, dry time. Because Sundays you could not sell any alcohol anywhere. This was in some town, not everywhere in the United States, but in some towns, until actually quite recent, especially in the South. Now, did they gorge on alcohol the rest of the time? Of course they did. But but it was interesting that Sundays were the time where essentially, that's where all the stores were closed, shops were closed, and so on. You actually really observe that. And some people, including me, kind of miss that in a way because essentially it means that you can concentrate on worshiping God more on the first day of the week. It's not the Sabbath day, because Sabbath day, remember, is Saturday. But the first day of the week when you go to church, remembering the Lord, at least one day out of the week you give him homage. But even as I'm talking about this, there is another law that was just recently passed, not within the last 2 months, but I believe in the first term of President Donald Trump. And that was essentially the repeal of Roe versus Wade, at least in terms of being a federal law that essentially to uphold abortion. They reversed it and put it, well, they didn't quite reverse it completely, but they said that essentially whatever the laws or regulations were regarding abortion, we're going to allow the states themselves to determine what it is. So it's in that way, it's similar to what this 21st Amendment's talking about regarding alcohol and its distribution. But what we got now is a hodgepodge of different laws of different states. If you're in one state, you can have an abortion, do whatever you need to do with it. In another state, you can only have an abortion if you're not past a certain number of weeks. In another one, you can only have an abortion if you show that that your body is threatened by it. And in some extreme cases, you have to really show that you are in, you are in immediate danger of dying. Now, in that last case, there have been people who have died while in the middle of their pregnancy. They haven't given childbirth yet, but because of complications happening with their pregnancy, the choice was whether do you allow the baby to die, or do you just push on and hope that the mother survives? And when they chose number 2, the mother ended up dying, and that has raised some pretty serious lawsuits or challenges to the court. And but again, the idea with this particular amendment, whatever you're thinking about it, is essentially you cannot legislate holiness, because people will do what they want to do. The same thing with the drug wars. I'm not saying to legalize heroin. I'm not saying legalize cocaine. I'm not even saying legalize marijuana, although they've already done that. But know that essentially, whatever people want to do to chase a high, to make money, to do whatever, they will do whatever they please to do. Doesn't mean it's right. It could be as wrong as 2 left shoes. But people will do what they want to do. And that essentially is the truth of the matter. But going back to Amendment 21, essentially there were some states that wanted to keep alcohol, at least on a limited basis, from being sold in their state. Others opened it up immediately. Then section number 3 deals with the implementation of this amendment. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states, not by the lawmakers, not by a majority of the lawmakers of that state, but by having a convention and the people vote on it. In that way, it was very interesting. It's one of the few amendments that was ratified that way, by a convention. Because what it did was it got the lawmakers off the hook, because there are people who were going to vote them out of office if they knew they were the ones who were behind the prohibition of liquor. So they felt it was safer to let the people themselves choose it. And they chose, through their conventions, to ratify the repeal of prohibition. It says, as provided in the Constitution, within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. So as this particular amendment was submitted, they had to get it done within 7 years. I believe it was essentially, I believe it was always 3/4 of the states would have had to have ratified it. They did, and so now, therefore, we have liquor back again. As I said before, the saints of God don't have to worry about this. But remember, in the Bible, they did drink alcohol. Although, to give them credit, many times they drank alcohol, it wasn't as strong as it is now. Plus, they also drank alcohol to be able to get water, because sometimes the water in the streams and the rivers and so on were not that clean, because people put everything in the streams and the rivers, if you get my drift. So it ended up being easier and cleaner and provided less chance for sickness to drink alcohol. Of course, with restraints. Because as it says, the Bible says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereof is not wise. And that's very true. So what I do, I don't drink it, but it's my own prerogative. It's my choice. It's what I believe. And so no one is making me do it. I'm doing it because I feel the Lord doesn't need for me, or doesn't want me to drink alcohol. So that is the 21st Amendment in its entirety. Hopefully you learned something from it. The one thing that I do want to take, one last thing, is that while we may add to the Constitution with the amendments, we may even repeal, but we can't do that to the Word of God. The Word of God cannot be amended, and the Word of God can't be repealed. It stands on its own forever. Christ said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words will never pass away. Thus saith the Word. God bless you. God keep you. Love you all. In Jesus' name.